You can't be serious, Father, I said, my voice wavering as I stared at him across the massive glass conference table. The floor-to-ceiling windows of Bennett Medical Group's executive floor offered a panoramic view of the hospital campus below, a kingdom Victor Bennett had built from the ground up, and one he refused to let me help lead. My father leaned back in his ergonomic chair, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, his expression calm and composed as always. He exhaled slowly, adjusting his gold cufflinks, a gift from the board after their most profitable quarter last year. "This is not up for discussion, Olivia," he said, tapping his Mont Blanc pen against the ignored proposal I'd spent months preparing. "The executive committee has already decided." My fists clenched at my sides, the freshly manicured nails digging into my palms. The sting helped me focus, kept me from shouting. I refused to give the other board members, mostly men in their 60s who'd been my father's golfing buddies for decades, the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. "So that's it?" I asked, my words sharp enough to cut through the tension. "You'd rather hand the clinical operations director position to Ethan, someone who couldn't even finish medical school, than let me prove myself, all because I'm a woman?" Father didn't even flinch. The hospital's mission statement, compassionate care, innovative medicine, glowed on the wall behind him, a mockery of the conversation we were having. "This division is for your brother to manage, Olivia," he said firmly, straightening his silk tie. "You've done exceptionally well with your healthcare administration degree, and your patient advocacy program has been interesting. But clinical operations requires a certain authority that patients and doctors alike respect. My name is Olivia Bennett. I'm 31 years old, Johns Hopkins educated with a master's in healthcare administration, and the daughter of Victor Bennett, CEO of Bennett Medical Group, one of the largest private hospital networks in the Northeast. My entire life has been about proving myself, earning my undergraduate degree in public health with honors, completing dual master's programs, implementing successful patient care initiatives that reduced readmission rates by 17%. Also, I could follow in my father's footsteps and transform our hospitals into truly patient-centered institutions. But standing there in that sterile conference room, watching the morning light reflect off medical awards and financial growth charts, I felt my carefully constructed world shift beneath me. It didn't matter how hard I worked or how much I loved healthcare. To him, I was just his daughter, someone who should be satisfied running charity galas and wellness programs while the men handled the real business of medicine. I looked him straight in the eye, finding my voice again, steadier now. "Ethan doesn't care about patient outcomes, Dad. He's never completed a clinical rotation in his life. He dropped out of medical school in his 3rd year, and he has absolutely no idea how to balance quality care with operational efficiency. You know that as well as I do." My father sighed, rubbing his temple like I was giving him a migraine. His Rolex, the one Mother gave him when he opened his first hospital, caught the light. "Ethan will learn. He's my son, Olivia." The Bennett name in medicine goes back 3 generations of men. "And you," he paused, his voice softening just slightly, revealing the father beneath the CEO, "you have other options, a future that doesn't involve the stress of running a medical division. I'm protecting you." I felt a bitter laugh escape my lips, echoing against the minimalist decor. "Protecting me?" I said, shaking my head in disbelief. "You're not protecting me, Dad. You're holding me back. I've earned this. I've worked harder than anyone, including Ethan, and you know it. My patient-centered care initiative saved this hospital group $2 million last year while improving satisfaction scores. But you won't even give me a chance because you're too stuck in your antiquated views to see what I'm capable of." His expression hardened, the momentary glimpse of fatherly concern vanishing. I knew I'd pushed too far. "That's enough, Olivia," he said, his voice sharp as a scalpel. Women make excellent care coordinators and wellness directors. That's where your talents lie. We're done here. I stormed out of the conference room, my heels clicking angrily against the polished marble hallway adorned with portraits of Bennett physicians dating back to the 1920s, all men, of course. The sound echoed through the administrative wing of our flagship hospital, past framed newspaper articles celebrating my father's medical empire. My mother was in the hospital's atrium, quietly arranging an elaborate flower display for the annual donor appreciation event. Her elegant hands, once skilled at inserting IVs and dressing wounds during her nursing days, now perfectly positioned orchids and roses. She looked up as I passed, her expression soft but weary, the lines around her eyes betraying years of similar disappointments. "Olivia," she said gently, catching my arm. "What happened, sweetheart?" I stopped, turning to her with a volatile mix of frustration and desperation threatening to spill over. "He won't let me run clinical operations," I said, my voice breaking despite my efforts to control it. "He's handing everything over to Ethan, and he expects me to smile and plan charity events instead." She sighed, her hands stilling over the flowers, a distant look crossing her face. "Your father, he has his ways," she said, her tone hesitant. "But maybe it's best not to push him right now, dear. The board meeting next month has him stressed." "He means well." I stared at her, stunned by her response. "Means well?" I repeated incredulously. "Mom, he's throwing away everything I've worked for because I'm a woman. How can you stand there and defend that? You were one of the most promising nursing leaders at Massachusetts General before you married him." She lowered her gaze, and I could see the years of quiet submission etched into her once determined face. The brilliant nurse who developed innovative patient care protocols, now arranging flowers and hosting galas. "I just don't want to see you hurt, Olivia," she said softly, adjusting her pearl necklace, another anniversary gift from my father. "Sometimes it's easier to accept the roles we're given." I found my happiness. Her words hung in the air between us, and I realized in that moment that I was truly on my own. The realization cut deeper than my father's rejection. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the recessed lighting in my downtown apartment ceiling, the weight of my father's words pressed down on me like a lead X-ray apron. I thought about everything I'd done to get to this point, endless nights analyzing healthcare metrics, research projects on improving patient outcomes while reducing costs, the sacrifices I'd made to live up to the Bennett medical legacy. The prestigious summer internships I'd secured on my own merit. The innovative care protocols I'd developed that were now being implemented in hospitals across 3 states. And for what? To be told I didn't belong in leadership, that my only value was to organize fundraisers and marry into another powerful medical family? The thought made my stomach turn like I'd swallowed something toxic. The next morning, I was halfway through packing my credentials portfolio when the door to my home office creaked open. My mother stood there, her face pale with confusion, still elegant in her designer suit ready for another hospital function. "Olivia, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice laced with worry, as darting to the open laptop displaying my CV and the framed medical administration license I'd just removed from the wall. Before I could answer, my father appeared behind her, his brows furrowed in irritation, white coat still on from his symbolic weekly rounds. "What's all this?" he demanded, stepping into the room, the scent of expensive aftershave and hospital antiseptic following him. "Where do you think you're going?" Ethan showed up last, leaning casually against the doorframe, still in wrinkled scrubs though I knew he hadn't set foot in an examination room in years. "Planning a sabbatical, sis?" he asked with that familiar smirk. "The wellness center in Aspen is amazing this time of year." I closed my portfolio with a snap and stood tall, facing them all. I'm leaving Bennett Medical Group, I said simply, my voice steadier than I'd expected. Since I'm not welcome in a leadership role and apparently don't belong in this family's vision for healthcare, I'm going to find an institution that values evidence-based management and patient-centered care. My father's face darkened like storm clouds gathering, and my mother clutched her necklace, looking like she was about to cry. Olivia, she said softly, don't do this. Let's talk about it. Your father has been under tremendous pressure with the merger negotiations. But I shook my head, my resolve unshaken. There's nothing to talk about. You've all made your priorities crystal clear. My father's jaw tightened, and he stepped closer, his imposing presence filling the room just as it did during board meetings. Don't be ridiculous, Olivia, he said, his tone cold and dismissive. This is your legacy. The Bennett name opens every door in medicine. Where else would you go? And for what? To make some sort of feminist point? I met his gaze without flinching, something I'd trained myself to do since my first clinical rotation. Yes, Dad, I said firmly, to make a point that I'm worth more than being pushed aside for someone who couldn't handle the pressure of medical school. You made it clear yesterday that I have no place in your executive team, so I'll find a healthcare system that values what I bring to the table. Ethan let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. You're really making a big deal out of nothing, Liv, he said, crossing his arms over his wrinkled scrubs. You're throwing a tantrum just because Dad isn't handing you the keys to the kingdom. There's more to running a hospital than patient satisfaction surveys. His dismissive tone pushed me over the edge. This isn't a tantrum, Ethan, I snapped. It's me taking control of my career, something you've never had to do because everything's been handed to you, including a vice presidency after you failed your USMLE Step 2 twice. My father raised a hand, silencing us both. Enough, he said sternly. Olivia, you're not leaving. You belong here with Bennett Medical. The community wellness program needs your touch. I shook my head, picking up my portfolio and medical journals. No, Dad. I belong somewhere I'm valued for my brain, not my touch, and clearly, that's not here. I walked past them, my certification documents and laptop under my arm as I made my way down the hallway lined with family photos, graduation ceremonies, hospital ribbon cuttings, charity galas, the visual history of the Bennett medical dynasty. My mother followed, her heels clicking anxiously on the hardwood floors. Olivia, please don't go, she said softly. We can figure this out as a family. Your father just needs time to see your potential. I stopped at the entrance and turned to look at her, this woman who had once been a pioneering nurse leader before marrying into the Bennett legacy, who had slowly surrendered her own medical career for family harmony. Mom, I said gently, I love you, but I can't keep pretending that things will change if I stay. Dad's had 8 years since I completed my master's degree to see my potential. He won't suddenly have an epiphany now. My father stood at the end of the hallway, watching silently, his expression unreadable behind his wire-rimmed glasses. Ethan leaned against the family portrait wall, clearly unfazed, scrolling through his phone like my departure meant nothing. I opened the front door and turned back one last time. When you're ready to treat me like a qualified healthcare administrator and not just a daughter who needs to marry well, you know where to find me, I said, my voice calm but firm. Then I walked out, the crisp morning air hitting my face as I closed the door behind me. For the first time since I'd joined Bennett Medical Group after graduation, I felt my shoulders relax, the weight of constant scrutiny lifting. I felt truly free to practice the kind of medicine I believed in. I didn't look back at the building that housed both my family's residence and the administrative headquarters of Bennett Medical Group. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Work and family had always been inseparable in our world. After leaving Bennett Medical Group, within days, I secured an interview at Metro Community Health Center, one of the most respected public hospitals in the region. They didn't care that I was a Bennett. All they cared about were my credentials, my innovative approaches to healthcare administration, and my passion for patient-centered care. When I walked into that aging but immaculately maintained facility, I wasn't Victor Bennett's daughter. I was Olivia Bennett, Johns Hopkins graduate and determined healthcare administrator with proven results. The building itself couldn't have been more different from my father's gleaming medical towers. Metro's mid-century architecture housed equipment that was functional rather than cutting-edge, and the waiting rooms were filled with patients from all walks of life rather than the wealthy clientele my father's hospitals primarily served. By the end of the week, Dr. Camila Rodriguez, the hospital's director, offered me a position as their healthcare improvement coordinator. For the first time in my professional life, I felt like I belonged somewhere for what I could do, not for who I was related to. Your ideas about reducing wait times while improving care quality are exactly what we need, Dr. Rodriguez told me, her dark eyes sharp with intelligence. She'd built her entire career in public health, working her way up from a community clinic in her immigrant neighborhood to running one of the city's most efficient hospitals despite constant budget constraints. "I'm not going to lie to you," she continued, leaning forward across her desk cluttered with patient files and grant proposals. "We don't have the resources your family's hospitals have. Our MRI machine is 5 years old, and we're constantly fighting for funding. But what we do have is a staff that truly cares and an administration willing to innovate." The work was challenging but deeply rewarding. I was given real responsibility and authority to implement changes, something my father had never trusted me with. Our patient population was diverse and often underserved, with complex medical and social needs that required creative solutions. Within a few months, I was leading a major initiative to redesign patient flow through the emergency department, resulting in reduced wait times and better outcomes. My team consisted of dedicated healthcare professionals who judged me solely on my ideas and work ethic, not my last name. Dr. Rodriguez became more than just my boss. She became a mentor who pushed me to take on greater responsibility. "You have a gift for seeing both the human and systems elements of healthcare," she told me after I successfully reorganized their chronic care management program. "That's rare, especially in administrators who haven't worked directly with patients." As much as I was thriving professionally, the nights were harder. Cutting ties with my family wasn't easy, no matter how justified it felt. There were moments, quiet ones, like coming home to my apartment after a long day of budget meetings and staff training, when the weight of it all would hit me. I missed my mother's gentle presence, even if she never stood up for me. I even missed Ethan's annoying jokes and the way he could sometimes make the entire hospital staff laugh during the annual holiday party. But what hurt the most was knowing my father didn't think twice about letting me go, his own daughter, who shared his passion for medicine, just not his outdated views. I hadn't heard from any of them in months. Not even my mother had called, though I'd seen her name on my caller ID twice before the calls were disconnected. I imagined my father standing nearby, silently disapproving of any contact. Months passed, and I poured everything I had into my work at Metro. The challenges were enormous: securing grants for new equipment, developing protocols that worked with limited resources, training staff to provide excellent care despite overwhelming patient loads. Often, I found myself in the hospital until midnight, reviewing processes and looking for efficiencies that wouldn't compromise care quality. With each successful initiative, my confidence grew. The emergency room redesign led to a 22% reduction in wait times. My chronic care coordination program reduced readmissions by 18%. The community health outreach I developed brought preventive care to neighborhoods that had historically low engagement with the medical system. I wasn't just a healthcare administrator anymore. I was becoming a force for change in community medicine. Dr. Rodriguez started bringing me to regional healthcare conferences, where my data-driven approaches to improving care while controlling costs gained attention. The growth wasn't just professional, it was personal too. I learned to stand on my own, to make decisions without worrying about whether they would please my father or fit into the Bennett healthcare philosophy. I developed my own leadership style, collaborative rather than authoritarian, focused on evidence rather than tradition. Every positive patient outcome felt like proof that I was more than they had ever given me credit for. I wasn't just Victor Bennett's daughter, I was Olivia Bennett, healthcare innovator, and I was making a name for myself on my own terms. One afternoon, after a particularly successful quarterly review meeting where we'd presented significant improvements across all departments, Dr. Rodriguez called me into her office. It was modest but practical, nothing like my father's mahogany-paneled domain, but somehow more authentic with its walls covered in public health campaign posters and thank you cards from patients. She gestured for me to take a seat and leaned back in her chair, her keen eyes studying me intently, a stack of medical journals serving as a paperweight on budget reports. "Olivia," she began, her tone measured, fingers steepled in front of her, "I have a case I think you're ready for. It's significant, complicated, and it's going to put you in the spotlight. Not just here at Metro, but citywide." I nodded, intrigued and slightly concerned by her serious expression. "What's the case?" I asked, leaning forward slightly, my mind already running through possibilities, perhaps the major healthcare grant we'd applied for, or the innovative community care initiative we'd been developing. She hesitated for a moment, took a deep breath, then continued, "We're representing a patient in a major medical malpractice suit against Bennett Medical Group." She paused, watching my reaction carefully. "They're suing your father's hospital for negligence in a case involving delayed diagnosis and improper treatment protocols. The patient, Mrs. Elena Vega, experienced catastrophic complications that could have been prevented. The stakes are enormous for her family, and the case is gaining attention in medical circles." The words hit me like a defibrillator shock. My stomach tightened into knots, and for a moment I couldn't speak. The room seemed to tilt slightly as the implications cascaded through my mind. "You want me to help build a case against my father's hospital group?" I finally said, my voice steadier than I felt, though my knuckles had turned white as I gripped the armrests. Dr. Rodriguez nodded, her expression compassionate but resolute. "I know it's personal, Olivia, but that's exactly why I want you involved. You understand how Bennett Medical Group operates, their protocols, their administrative structure, their approach to risk management. You're one of the sharpest healthcare administrators I've ever worked with, and you've proven your commitment to patient advocacy. If anyone can help ensure this woman gets justice, it's you." I took a deep breath, trying to process what she was asking. The Bennett name had been synonymous with medical excellence in this city for generations. Despite my personal conflicts with my father, I'd never questioned the quality of care their hospitals provided. "Camila," I said slowly, using her first name as we often did during serious discussions, "you realize what this could mean for me, personally and professionally? This isn't just another case, it's my family, my history. It could permanently burn any bridge that might still exist." She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk cluttered with patient advocacy materials. "I understand that," she said firmly, "but this is your chance to demonstrate what you truly stand for, that patients come before profits, before family connections, before everything. This case represents exactly the kind of healthcare inequity you've been fighting against since you joined us." She slid a file folder across the desk. Mrs. Vega was admitted to Bennett Memorial with symptoms that clearly indicated a serious cardiac condition. Instead of being properly triaged, she waited for hours because she didn't have premium insurance. By the time she was seen, the damage was extensive. The cardiologist who eventually treated her has privately expressed concerns about the protocols but is afraid to speak out. I opened the file, scanning the medical details. The documentation was damning: clear signs missed, protocols not followed, decisions apparently made based on insurance status rather than medical need. My father's signature was on the hospital policy that had been implemented 6 months earlier, a policy I had argued against before I left. "This is a lot to take in," I said, my voice quieter now as I closed the file. The patient's face stared up at me from the attached photo, a middle-aged Latina woman, someone's mother, someone's wife. Dr. Rodriguez nodded, her expression understanding. "I don't expect you to decide right here and now. It's a big ask, Olivia, and I know how personal this is for you." I met her gaze, grateful for her patience and understanding. "Would it be all right if I reviewed the complete file first? I need to think about how this could affect everything, not just my career, but..." I trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence. "Take all the time you need," Dr. Rodriguez said, her voice steady. "But we need to move quickly if we're going to help Mrs. Vega. Her family is struggling with mounting medical bills for care that should never have been necessary. Let me know by the end of the day tomorrow." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, city lights filtering through my blinds, my mind racing with everything at stake. The patient file lay open on my nightstand, Mrs. Vega's medical records telling a story of systemic failure, exactly the kind of case I'd gone into healthcare administration to prevent. Taking the case meant going up against my father, the man who had dismissed my capabilities and handed everything to Ethan without a second thought. It meant challenging the hospital group that bore my name, the legacy that had opened so many doors for me, even as it closed others. But it also meant standing up for a patient who had been wronged, advocating for the kind of healthcare I believed in: equitable, compassionate, and evidence-based. For 2 days, I went back and forth, weighing the professional and personal consequences. I thought about my father's cold dismissal of everything I'd worked for, about my mother's quiet resignation to the status quo, and about Ethan's smug sense of entitlement. But I also thought about the chance to truly embody the values I claimed to stand for, to show everyone, including myself, that I wasn't just talking about patient-centered care, I was willing to fight for it, even when it cost me personally. I reviewed Mrs. Vega's file repeatedly, noting discrepancies between official protocols and what had actually happened. I recognized the handwriting on some of the orders: doctors I'd known since childhood, administrators I'd worked alongside. This wasn't just about my father, it was about an entire system that sometimes prioritized efficiency and profitability over patient welfare. By the end of the second day, I made up my mind. I walked into Dr. Rodriguez's office the next morning, my shoulders squared and my voice steady despite a night of minimal sleep. "I'll help with the case," I said simply, placing Mrs. Vega's file on her desk with my preliminary analysis notes attached. Her face brightened with approval and what looked like respect. "I knew you would make the right choice," she said with a determined smile. "Your commitment to patients over politics is exactly why I wanted you here at Metro." She reached for her phone. "Let's get our legal team in here and start building this case. The depositions begin next week." The day of the first hearing arrived, and the tension in my body felt like a physical presence. As I entered the courthouse alongside our hospital's legal team and Mrs. Vega's family, I clutched my leather portfolio tightly, my heels clicking against the polished marble with every step. The weight of responsibility pressed down on my shoulders, not just professional responsibility to Metro and Mrs. Vega, but the moral weight of what I was about to do. The Vega family walked beside me, Elena in a wheelchair, her husband Carlos gently guiding her, their adult children flanking them protectively. Elena's once active body had been devastated by complications that proper care could have prevented. Looking at her, I felt my resolve strengthen. This case wasn't about my family drama, it was about justice for this woman. As I approached the front of the courtroom, I saw them, my father and Ethan, sitting at the opposing table alongside Bennett Medical Group's legal team. Our eyes met, and I felt their shock hit me like a physical force across the room. My father's jaw tightened immediately, his eyes narrowing behind his glasses as recognition dawned. Ethan's mouth fell open slightly before he quickly masked his surprise with that familiar smirk, though I could see the unease in his expression as he leaned over to whisper something to their lead attorney. I set my portfolio on our table and met their stares head-on. I wasn't going to look away or falter. I was here representing a patient who had been harmed by systemic failures, and nothing, not their surprise, not their disapproval, not the childhood memories threatening to surface, was going to throw me off. For a brief moment, my father's gaze softened almost imperceptibly, something flashing in his eyes that might have been hurt or disappointment. But he quickly composed himself, straightening his custom suit jacket and leaning over to whisper something to their chief counsel. I didn't care what he said. I was ready. As the proceedings began, I slipped into my role seamlessly, providing our attorneys with insights into Bennett Medical Group's operational procedures. Every protocol analysis, every staffing pattern explanation, every quality metric interpretation I offered was executed with precision and professional detachment. I kept my tone calm, my demeanor collected, and my focus solely on the medical facts of the case. When the judge addressed questions to me about hospital administration standards, I responded with confidence, never faltering under the weight of my father's scrutiny or Ethan's increasingly uncomfortable glances. The Bennett name was mentioned repeatedly throughout the proceedings, but I didn't flinch each time it was spoken. I wasn't Olivia, the daughter or sister, in that room. I was Olivia Bennett, healthcare administration expert for Metro Community Health Center, and I intended to ensure that Mrs. Vega received justice. Even when Ethan took the stand and fumbled through explanations of administrative decisions he clearly didn't understand, I maintained my professional composure, though internally I noted every misrepresentation and half-truth. My father sat quietly for most of the proceedings, his expression unreadable, but I could feel his eyes on me as I consulted with our attorneys or reviewed documentation. It didn't matter. I wasn't there to earn his approval anymore. I was there to uphold the medical ethics he himself had taught me as a child, before profit margins became his primary concern. After several hearings, it became painfully obvious, at least for my father and the Bennett Medical Group legal team, that our case was strong. Every argument their attorneys brought to the table crumbled under the weight of the evidence we presented. The medical records clearly showed neglect of established protocols. Testimony from staff members, some speaking anonymously for fear of retaliation, revealed a pattern of prioritizing insured patients. Ethan's testimony had been particularly damaging. His inexperience with actual hospital operations was glaring, and when questioned about the specific triage protocols that had been implemented under his supervision as clinical operations director, he contradicted himself repeatedly. My father tried to step in once or twice, but even his considerable influence couldn't salvage the damage Ethan's testimony had done. The tide was turning rapidly, and everyone in the courtroom knew it. By the fourth hearing, Bennett Medical Group proposed a settlement. I could see the frustration etched into my father's face as their lead counsel approached ours with the terms. After several rounds of negotiations, with Mrs. Vega and her family fully involved in the decision-making process, we agreed to a resolution that included not just substantial financial compensation, but also, at my insistence, mandatory protocol changes and staff retraining at all Bennett facilities. As the settlement documents were being signed, I caught my father glancing at me from across the room. He looked defeated, but there was something else in his expression, something that might have been regret, or perhaps reluctant respect. Ethan, on the other hand, avoided my gaze entirely, staring at his phone like a teenager being scolded. I didn't approach either of them. My work here was done, and I had proven exactly what I'd set out to, that patient care must always come before profit or convenience. Usually, after a settlement, I would stay behind to ensure our clients understood all the terms and to thank the legal team. It was something I always did, a small gesture of professionalism and compassion, regardless of how emotionally draining the case might have been. But this time, there was no opportunity. My father and Ethan had already gathered their things and were being ushered out a side door by their attorneys, without so much as a glance in my direction. No acknowledgement, no professional courtesy, not even a curt nod. It stung more than I wanted to admit. Even after everything, some childish part of me had hoped for some kind of recognition, some small sign that they'd seen what I was capable of and respected it. Instead, they walked away, silent and defeated, leaving me standing there with the weight of unfinished personal business pressing on my chest. I took a deep breath, pushed aside the disappointment, and refocused on Mrs. Vega and her family. They were embracing each other, tears of relief streaming down their faces. That was what mattered. That evening, back at Metro Community Health Center, my colleagues greeted me with applause as I walked through the doors. Dr. Rodriguez was the first to approach, meeting me in the lobby with a warm embrace and an approving smile. "Well done, Olivia," she said, guiding me toward the staff lounge where a small celebration had been arranged. That settlement is not just a win for the Vegas, but for every patient who will benefit from the protocol changes. You stood for what was right, even when it was incredibly difficult personally. The team had set up a modest celebration with coffee, homemade desserts, and a hand-drawn congratulatory banner. It was nothing like the elaborate catered affairs Bennett Medical would have arranged, but the sincerity made it infinitely more meaningful. Mrs. Vega and her family had come to express their gratitude as well. Elena, still in her wheelchair but with noticeably improved spirits, took my hand firmly in hers. "You gave us back our dignity, Ms. Bennett," she said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "The money will help with my care, yes, but knowing that other families won't suffer like we did, that means everything." For the first time that day, I let myself truly smile. Surrounded by people who valued me for my principles and hard work, I felt a sense of accomplishment that no words from my father or Ethan could have given me. This victory belonged to Mrs. Vega and to the values I'd chosen to uphold. Later that night, alone in my apartment, the city lights created patterns across my living room as I sat by the window with a glass of wine. The adrenaline from the day had worn off, and in the quiet, my thoughts inevitably drifted back to my family. I replayed the courtroom moments in my head, the way my father's face had tightened with every piece of evidence we presented, the way Ethan couldn't even look me in the eye when it was over. I had expected them to be angry or defensive, but the silence they left me with was somehow harder to bear. For years, I had dreamed of earning my father's respect, of proving to him that I was worthy, not just of the Bennett name, but of a place in the healthcare system I had once hoped to help lead. And now, even after winning this case against them, I wasn't sure what I had achieved in their eyes. Did they finally see me for who I was, or was I just a painful reminder of their failure to meet their own ethical standards? The questions lingered unanswered as I stared out at the city skyline, wondering if the family ties I'd severed could ever truly be mended, or if they should be. The next morning, as I walked into Metro Community Health Center, the usual sounds of a busy public hospital greeted me, phones ringing at the nurses' station, the gentle beep of monitoring equipment, patients speaking in various languages with healthcare providers. I'd come to find comfort in this controlled chaos, so different from the hushed, hotel-like atmosphere of Bennett facilities. I had barely settled into my office, sorting through follow-up items from the settlement, when my assistant knocked on the door, her expression uncharacteristically hesitant. "Dr. Bennett? Your father is here. He's waiting in the main conference room." The words stopped me mid-motion, my coffee cup suspended halfway to my lips. "My father?" I asked, trying to maintain my composure though my heart had begun racing immediately. "Victor Bennett is here? Now?" She nodded, fidgeting slightly with her ID badge. "He arrived about 20 minutes ago. Dr. Rodriguez has been speaking with him, but he specifically asked to see you. He said it was important." I thanked her, though my mind was already racing as I made my way down the hallway past bulletin boards covered with community health notices and staff recognition awards. What could he possibly want? To threaten further legal action? To demand I stop using the Bennett name professionally? When I opened the door to our modest conference room, nothing like Bennett Medical's sleek boardrooms with their video walls and ergonomic seating, there he was, Victor Bennett, sitting stiffly in a standard-issue chair, his impeccable suit looking out of place against the functional, dated decor. He looked up as I entered, his expression unreadable, though the slight furrow in his brow betrayed something, discomfort, perhaps, at being in such pedestrian surroundings. "Olivia," he said simply, his voice quieter than I'd heard it in board meetings. I closed the door behind me, keenly aware of curious glances from staff members passing by. This would be through the hospital grapevine within minutes. "Dad," I replied, keeping my tone even and professional. "What brings you to Metro? I imagine this isn't your usual hospital tour." He stood up slowly, smoothing his custom-tailored jacket as though gathering his thoughts. "I came here to speak with you directly," he said, his tone measured but serious, "to say some things that are long overdue." I walked over to the conference table, setting my files down carefully, maintaining the physical barrier between us. "All right," I said, crossing my arms. "I'm listening." He hesitated, glancing around the well-worn conference room with its outdated technology and motivational posters about teamwork, before turning back to me. "You were exceptional during those proceedings, Olivia," he began, his voice softening slightly. "I've worked with healthcare administrators for 40 years, some of the best in the business, and what you did, your analysis, your understanding of both clinical and administrative factors, your advocacy for the patient, it was remarkable. You left no doubt about who the better administrator was." His words caught me off guard, but I maintained my composed expression, waiting for the other shoe to drop. This wasn't just a social call to deliver compliments. I've spent my entire career believing that the Bennett medical legacy meant maintaining control, keeping things within the family, doing things the way they've always been done, he continued, rubbing his temple slightly. I thought I was doing the right thing, pushing Ethan to step up, even when I knew deep down he wasn't suited for hospital administration. He lacks your analytical mind and your compassion for patients. He paced slightly, the action so uncharacteristic that I found myself genuinely surprised. Victor Bennett didn't pace, he commanded rooms from a position of authority. "The Vega case," he said, stopping to look directly at me. "It forced me to see what our hospitals have become under certain policies. Policies I approved. It's not what I went into medicine to do. And watching you fight for that patient, it reminded me of why I became a doctor in the first place." He drew a deep breath. "I failed you, Olivia. You've worked harder than anyone, earned every credential, produced measurable improvements in every program you've touched. And I failed to recognize that because I was too attached to outdated notions about leadership." I blinked, unprepared for this admission. This was the man who had spent years dismissing my achievements, telling me to focus on appropriate aspects of healthcare. And now he was standing here in the heart of Metro Community Health Center, admitting he was wrong. Why now? I finally asked, my voice steady but cautious. Why are you telling me this now, after everything that's happened? He met my gaze, his blue eyes, so like my own, filled with an honesty I hadn't seen since I was a child following him on hospital rounds. Because I saw what you're capable of, he said simply, and I realized I've been a fool. Ethan isn't ready to lead clinical operations, and he may never be. But you've proven you have what it takes, not just to manage, but to transform healthcare. He stepped closer, his tone almost pleading, another first in my experience. Olivia, I'm asking you to come back to Bennett Medical Group. Not as a wellness coordinator or community outreach director, but as our new Chief Patient Care Officer. The board has already approved the position. The hospital group needs your vision. I need your perspective. The words hung in the air between us, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. I had spent so long fighting for this kind of recognition, dreaming of hearing those words from him, but now that they were here, I found myself filled with conflicting emotions. What about Ethan? I asked finally, needing to understand the full picture. What happens to him in this restructuring? My father's face tightened slightly, and he nodded slowly. Ethan will remain with the organization, but in a role better suited to his abilities. Public relations and community engagement, he's always been good with people in a social context. This is about you, Olivia. It's about giving you the authority you've earned and bringing Bennett Medical back to the patient-focused institution it was meant to be. I took a deep breath, watching a nurse wheel a patient past the conference room window, a reminder of why I'd gone into healthcare administration in the first place. I need time to think about this, I said finally, my voice calm but firm. This isn't something I can decide on the spot. A lot has happened, and I've built something meaningful here at Metro. Dr. Rodriguez has trusted me with major initiatives. Our patients count on the programs I've implemented. My father nodded, his expression serious but understanding. Of course, he said. I wouldn't expect an immediate answer. This is a significant decision. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folder. This contains the formal offer, including the position description we've developed and the authority it would carry. I want you to see that this isn't just a title, it comes with real power to implement the changes you've always advocated for. He placed the folder on the table between us. Take all the time you need. I'm not asking for an answer today, Olivia. I just needed you to know that I recognize what I've done, and that I want to make it right. He moved toward the door, but before he left, he turned back to face me. Olivia, he said, his tone softer now, the clinical detachment momentarily gone. I know I haven't said this enough, or maybe ever, but I am proud of you. Watching you in that courtroom, fighting for that patient's rights, you were better than I ever was, better than I taught you to be. You learned that on your own. His words hit me harder than I expected, and for a moment, I just stared at him, unsure of how to respond to this version of my father I barely recognized. He gave me a small, almost hesitant smile before turning and walking out of the conference room, leaving me alone with the offer folder and my thoughts. As I sat at the conference table, his words echoed in my mind. Better than I ever was. For so long, I had fought to prove myself to him, to show that I was more than just his daughter, that I was capable, competent, and deserving of respect in the healthcare field. And now, hearing those words, I felt a complicated surge of pride and lingering hurt that I couldn't simply ignore. Now it's nearly midnight, and I'm lying in bed staring at the ceiling, the offer folder open on my nightstand, its contents meticulously reviewed 3 times. My father's proposal is everything I've worked for, everything I thought I wanted: executive authority to implement patient-centered reforms throughout the entire Bennett medical system, with direct reporting to the board, not through my father. But going back would mean stepping into a world where I was once dismissed, where I'd have to navigate the shadows of old wounds and fractured trust. It would mean working alongside Ethan, knowing the resentment he might harbor. It would mean facing staff who had witnessed my departure and now my return under dramatically different circumstances. And yet, staying where I am has its own complexities. Metro Community Health Center has been good to me, and I've grown here in ways I never imagined. Dr. Rodriguez has been the mentor I always needed. Our patient population genuinely requires advocates who understand their needs. But Metro isn't Bennett Medical Group. The resources are limited, the reach is smaller, and the system changes I could implement would never have the same widespread impact. If I go back, I'd have a chance to transform one of the largest private healthcare networks in the region, to make patient-centered care more than just a marketing slogan. I could reshape the Bennett legacy on my terms, proving that compassionate care and financial sustainability aren't mutually exclusive. The faces of patients like Mrs. Vega float through my mind. How many more could benefit if Bennett's entire network adopted the reforms I've championed? How many lives could be improved or saved if I had the authority to implement system-wide changes? I haven't made up my mind yet. The choice feels momentous, and the weight of the decision keeps me awake, staring at the shadows playing across my bedroom ceiling. Dr. Rodriguez's words from earlier today replay in my thoughts. Whatever you decide, make sure it's for the right reasons, Olivia. Not for validation, not for your father, but for the patients and the kind of medicine you believe in. The choice ahead isn't just about a career move, it's about what kind of healthcare leader I want to be and what legacy I want to build, whether it bears the Bennett name or not. But maybe you can help. What would you do in my situation? Fight from within a flawed system with greater resources, or continue building something new with limited reach? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Healthcare is ultimately about people, and I'd love to hear your perspective. When I discovered that cloud storage sync error, my world shattered like fine crystal hitting concrete. There they were, my family, their faces illuminated by the blue light of their laptop screens during our weekly video call, talking about me as if I was nothing more than a numerical error in their financial spreadsheet. The familiar sight of our family Zoom meeting, usually a source of connection, now felt like a window into a betrayal I never saw coming. Evelyn only helps because she owes us. My mother Patricia's voice crackled through my speakers, her carefully maintained appearance doing nothing to mask the contempt in her words. After everything we've invested in her education, paying our mortgage is the bare minimum she could do. My brother Nathan's face appeared in his video window, his expression carrying that same smug superiority he'd worn since childhood. Yeah, and she acts like she's doing us some huge favor with her tech money. What a joke. The worst part was watching my father Maxwell's silent nod of agreement in his own video panel. The man who had once patiently explained complex math problems to me at our kitchen table now sat in his home office, tacitly approving as they dismantled my character. The video conference had been automatically recorded and saved to our shared family cloud storage, a technical oversight that had finally revealed their true feelings. I watched the recording 3 times, each viewing crystallizing my emotions from shock to a strange, cold clarity. For the past 4 years, I'd been making substantial payments on their mortgage through my LLC, Divine Healthcare Investments. They thought they were making payments to a standard financial institution, never bothering to read the detailed terms of the agreement that Sophia, my financial advisor, had helped arrange. Every month they made their token contribution while I covered the majority of the payment, all while they complained about my supposed lack of family support. I glanced at my second monitor, displaying a message from Uncle Marcus. You needed to see this, Evelyn. I noticed the cloud sync issue and, well, you deserve to know. They've been talking like this for months. sitting in my home office in Silicon Valley, surrounded by the patents and awards from my medical device innovations, I pulled up the spreadsheets detailing every payment I'd made. The numbers were unambiguous: over $200,000 invested in maintaining their lifestyle in that Phoenix house. My hands should have been trembling with rage, but instead, they moved steadily across my keyboard as I accessed the mortgage agreement. A slight smile crossed my face as I remembered the purchase option clause Sophia had insisted on including, just in case, she'd said. In retrospect, her foresight seemed almost prophetic. The next payment was due in 2 weeks, and for the first time since this arrangement began, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Opening my messaging app, I sent a carefully worded text to Uncle Marcus. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Don't worry about them discovering your involvement. But changes are coming. I've always been the family's silent safety net, though they'd never acknowledge it. 4 years ago, when the Phoenix real estate market crashed and they were facing foreclosure, I stepped in. I was 28 then, already making my mark in medical device development. The irony was that they never approved of my career choice. They wanted me to join my father's struggling real estate business, following in Nathan's footsteps. Medical technology is no field for a woman, my mother would say during our video calls, her perfectly maintained appearance betraying her outdated views. Your brother Nathan is the one with real business acumen. Yet Nathan, with all his supposed business sense, had nearly bankrupted the family company within 2 years of taking over. When they needed help with the mortgage, I consulted Sofia Rivera, my financial advisor. She suggested an innovative solution: create an LLC focused on healthcare investments, buy the house through it, and let them think they're dealing with a standard financial institution, she explained during one of our strategy sessions. This way, you protect yourself legally while helping them. The plan seemed perfect at the time. I could assist without dealing with their pride. Divine Healthcare Investments LLC became their mortgage holder, and I quietly supplemented their monthly payments. They maintained their illusion of independence, and I kept my family stable. Uncle Marcus was the only one who knew the truth, having overheard Sophia and me discussing it during one of our family video conferences. "You're too generous with them, Evelyn," he'd said in a private chat later. "They don't deserve this level of support." I defended them then, of course. They were family. They might not understand my choices, but they'd given me a foundation to build from. Now, watching that recorded video conference for the 4th time, I realized how wrong I'd been. Their words echoed through my home office: "She owes us." What a joke. The least she can do. Each phrase felt like lines of code revealing fatal errors in what I'd thought was a perfectly functioning program. I opened my laptop and logged into the LLC's account management system. The next mortgage payment was due on the 15th, just 2 weeks away. They had never missed their portion before, always transferring their monthly contribution like clockwork. But now, knowing their true feelings, I had no intention of covering the remainder. Let them face the consequences of their own actions. Let them discover that their supposedly ungrateful daughter was actually their landlord. The thought brought a smile to my face as I reviewed the transaction history on my screen. The digital trail of betrayal didn't end with that video conference. Uncle Marcus sent me more evidence the next day, screenshots from a private family WhatsApp group I'd been deliberately excluded from. They'd created it 6 months ago, with the ironic name Family Finances. Each message notification felt like another line of code revealing the corruption in our family's system. "Evelyn thinks she's so special with her Silicon Valley job," Nathan had written. "She barely helps with the mortgage while I'm here every day trying to save Dad's business." My mother's response made my blood run cold: "We should ask her for more support. She's single with no kids, just that fancy condo in the tech district." What else does she spend her money on? After all we sacrificed for her Stanford education, she can't even properly support her family. I pulled up my financial records, my dual monitors displaying the stark reality of their ingratitude. Over the past 4 years, I'd contributed $267,843 toward their mortgage through Divine Healthcare Investments, while they had only paid $52,500. The monthly payments were substantial. I had been covering an additional $5,400 every month while they remained blissfully unaware. My phone lit up with a notification, a message from my mother. "Sweetie, could you join our family video call this Sunday? We need to discuss something important." I knew exactly what that something was. They were planning to ask for more money, probably with a carefully choreographed performance of family obligation. The thought of sitting through another video conference, pretending I hadn't seen their true colors, made my stomach turn. I scheduled a video call with Sophia, my financial advisor. "I need to review all my options with the purchase agreement. I had a feeling you might contact me about this," she said, her professional demeanor unchanged as she shared her screen showing the relevant documents. "Remember that clause we specifically included? If they miss a payment, Divine Healthcare Investments can exercise the purchase option immediately. The house would be yours outright, and they'd become month-to-month tenants." As I watched her highlight the key sections of the agreement, a plan began crystallizing in my mind. And if they were late with rent payments, standard Arizona eviction laws would apply, correct? She paused, her cursor hovering over the relevant clause. "Yes, you'd be within your rights to issue a notice." Another pause. "Evelyn, are you certain you want to pursue this course of action?" I glanced at my second monitor, still displaying the WhatsApp screenshots. I thought about years of condescension during video calls, of being treated like the family's personal venture capital fund while they mocked me in their private chats. I remembered every dismissive comment about my career in medical technology, every time they praised Nathan's business acumen while he drove our father's company toward bankruptcy. "Yes," I replied, my voice as steady as my typing fingers. "I'm certain. But let's maintain radio silence for now. They can continue thinking everything's normal." I opened my message thread with my mother and typed, "Of course, I'll join the call. Looking forward to it." I added a heart emoji, a small piece of code that felt both ironic and necessary. After all, they'd taught me well, sometimes the best system updates require a perfect user interface. The next mortgage payment was due in 13 days, and for the first time since writing the initial code for this arrangement, I wouldn't be there to debug their financial errors. The family video call felt like a carefully orchestrated performance piece. I logged in exactly at 6 p.m., adjusting my webcam to ensure my home office backdrop looked professional yet approachable. My mother's face appeared first, her carefully applied makeup HD ready, wearing a new designer blouse that probably cost more than their monthly mortgage contribution. "Evelyn, sweetheart." Her voice came through my premium speakers with artificial warmth. I noticed her new jewelry catching the light as she gestured another unnecessary expense when they could barely afford their house payments. Nathan joined next, his smug expression filling his video panel. He'd positioned himself in what looked like a corporate office, though I knew the real estate company was struggling. "Hey sis, good of you to make time for your family." I smiled, remembering his WhatsApp message about me barely helping. If he only knew that his entire lifestyle depended on my generosity. "I always prioritize family," I replied, the irony tasting bitter in my mouth. My father was the last to join, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he clearly reviewed some financial documents off-screen. I caught a glimpse of bank statements in the reflection of his glasses. They were preparing their pitch with military precision. "Before we get too far into catching up, my mother began, adjusting her camera angle to what she probably thought was more flattering. We wanted to discuss something important. She glanced off-screen, presumably at my father's window in the call. Of course, I said, taking a sip from my coffee mug to hide my expression. What's on your mind? Nathan cleared his throat, the sound distorting slightly through his cheap microphone. Well, as you know, Dad's business has been facing some challenges. The real estate market isn't what it used to be. I maintained my neutral expression, though internally I noted that the Phoenix real estate market was actually booming. The business had been facing challenges ever since Nathan took over, despite the favorable market conditions. We've been thinking, my mother continued, leaning closer to her camera in what I recognized as her practiced sympathetic pose, about how blessed we are to have such a successful daughter. Your father and I sacrificed so much to give you that Stanford education. I observed their performance through my high-resolution monitor, noting how each family member played their assigned role. The gentle head tilts, the strategic pauses, the careful reminders of past sacrifices, it was all meticulously choreographed. The mortgage payments have become quite burdensome, my father added, his voice carrying that familiar tone of paternal authority that used to make me feel so small. And with you doing so well in your computer work. Medical device development, I corrected automatically, though they'd never bothered to understand that I created technology that saved lives. I lead a team developing cutting-edge, cardiac monitoring systems. Right, he waved dismissively at his webcam. Well, we thought perhaps you could help more with the monthly payments. After all, this is your family home too. If they only knew how much of it was already mine through Divine Healthcare investments. We're only asking for an extra $2,000 a month, my mother added quickly, her image pixelating slightly as she moved closer to her camera. It's not much considering your Silicon Valley salary. I took another sip of coffee, using the moment to maintain my composure. The audacity of asking for $2,000 more when they didn't even know I was already paying over $5,000 monthly was almost impressive. I'll need to review my finances, I said carefully, keeping my voice neutral. The medical technology sector can be unpredictable. Unpredictable? Nathan scoffed, his video feed freezing momentarily. Come on, we all know you're doing fine with your tech money. Unlike some of us who are actually working to preserve this family's legacy. I smiled, thinking about the automated default notice that would hit their inboxes next week. You're right, Nathan. Sometimes we all get exactly what we deserve. After disconnecting from the call, I kept my video conferencing software running but muted, knowing they would likely start another call without me. Within minutes, my prediction proved correct. A notification showed they had started a new meeting. I hadn't closed the shared cloud drive that was still syncing their conversations. She's not going to help. Nathan's voice came through clearly as the recording began automatically saving. Did you see how she sat there with her fancy office setup and her self-righteous attitude about her medical technology career? Patience, my father replied, the sound of papers shuffling in the background. We have leverage. Remember those investment documents I found in her cloud storage when she used our guest Wi-Fi during her last visit? She's been hiding money in some company called Divine Healthcare Investments. My blood ran cold. I had forgotten to disable autosync when I'd briefly connected to their network during my last Phoenix visit. A rookie IT mistake that had exposed my carefully constructed system. I looked into it, my father continued. It's a legitimate LLC, and it's doing very well. She's been hoarding resources there instead of supporting her family. I raised a snake, my mother's voice dripped with venom. We'll give her one more chance to help voluntarily. If not, I'll remind her about that time in college when she supposedly borrowed money from the business account for her tuition. She thinks we never knew. I pulled up my archived emails, finding the documented approval from my father for that emergency loan, which I'd repaid with interest within a month after my first internship. Their attempted blackmail was as poorly researched as Nathan's business strategies. And if that doesn't work, Nathan added, I have a contact in the medical device industry. We could raise some questions about her project management practices, maybe suggest she's been misappropriating research funds. That would get her company's attention. The casual way they discussed destroying my career, a career that had helped develop life-saving technologies, sent ice through my veins. These weren't family members. They were malicious actors trying to breach my security protocols. I quietly closed the video conference window and opened my secure messaging app to contact Uncle Marcus. They found out about Divine Healthcare investments, but they don't understand what it really is. They're planning to blackmail me. My phone buzzed with an incoming video call, my mother again. I took a deep breath and accepted it, making sure my professional office backdrop was still perfectly framed. Evelyn, dear, she said sweetly, her video quality crystal clear from the expensive phone I'd bought her last Christmas. Have you had time to think about what we discussed regarding the mortgage payments? I met her gaze through my screen. Actually, I have. You're right, family should help family. I'll have a complete response for you in about 8 days. The timing wasn't arbitrary. Their mortgage payment was due in 8 days, and I knew exactly what would happen when Divine Healthcare Investments revealed its true ownership. 8 days? I could see Nathan's frown even in his small video window. Why such a specific timeline? I adjusted my webcam slightly, ensuring they could see the medical device patents hanging on my wall behind me. Just need to consult with my financial advisor. You understand, right? Being careful with money is just good business sense. I smiled as I echoed their favorite phrase. My mother moved closer to her camera, her expression carefully constructed. We knew you'd understand, sweetheart. Family always comes first. Yes, I agreed, thinking of the eviction notice template already saved in my documents folder. Family always gets exactly what they deserve. After ending the call, I sent a message to Sophia, time to activate our contingency plan. They just threatened my career to extort more money. The next week would test everything I'd learned about system architecture, but this time, I was debugging a family's fatal errors. The following days crawled by with excruciating precision. My family maintained their pressure campaign through a constant stream of digital communication. Each notification on my phone represented another attempt at manipulation, each message automatically forwarded to a secure folder where Sophia could document their escalating threats. All documentation is in place, Sophia confirmed during our encrypted video call 3 days before the payment was due. Once they miss the payment, Divine Healthcare Investments can execute its purchase option immediately. I've also prepared the eviction notices as a contingency. I reviewed each document on my shared screen. And you're certain everything's legally secure? They can't exploit any system vulnerabilities? The agreement they signed 4 years ago is ironclad, Sophia assured me. Your father barely scanned the documentation. He was too desperate for the bailout to perform proper due diligence. Everything's been filed and verified. That evening, Nathan launched his own attack vector. Hey sis, his message popped up on my phone. Just had lunch with someone from MedTech recruitment. Heard some companies are doing layoffs. Must be scary in your industry right now. Good thing you have family to fall back on. Speaking of which, about that financial help we discussed. The transparent manipulation attempt was almost elegantly crude. I showed the message to Uncle Marcus during our video coffee catch-up the next day. Their tactics never evolve, he sighed, adjusting his camera to better show his home office. Your aunt and I watched them deploy the same strategies against everyone in the family. It's why we implemented our own firewall years ago. Did you know they accessed my cloud storage during my last visit? I asked, though I already knew the answer. They pulled the same exploit when your cousin stayed there last year. They're always scanning for vulnerabilities. He paused. Are you prepared for the system crash when this goes live? Their response won't be elegant. I thought about their threats to contact my company's HR department, their plans to exploit an old college loan, their years of taking my support while undermining me in private chat groups. I'm ready. They chose their execution path. Now they'll have to debug their own errors. 2 days before the payment was due, my mother initiated another video call. Evelyn, we need your answer about the additional mortgage support. Times are difficult, and family needs to stay connected. Don't worry, Mom, I replied, my video feed perfectly stable. Everything will be resolved very soon. That night, I received an automated notification from their bank. Attempted funds transfer to Divine Healthcare Investments had failed due to insufficient balance. They had already overdrawn their account. I forwarded the notification to Sophia. Looks like we're getting error messages already, she messaged back. Want me to initiate proceedings tomorrow? I glanced at my screen recordings from our family dinner video call, their smug expressions, their casual discussion of sabotaging my career, their years of taking advantage of my support. I thought about all the times they'd dismissed my work in medical technology while relying on the money it provided. No, I responded. Let's wait until the payment officially fails. Let them operate under normal parameters for 2 more days. They taught me the importance of timing in system deployment. I opened my laptop and began drafting a detailed email to my company's HR department, documenting my family's escalating threats and attaching the evidence Uncle Marcus had collected. Better to firewall against potential attacks. The program was approaching its final execution, and I was implementing every security protocol. Sometimes, I murmured to myself as I encrypted the files, the most effective debugging simply requires letting a faulty system crash on its own. The payment deadline arrived with digital precision. At 9 a.m. sharp, Divine Healthcare Investments' automated system dispatched its default notice. I monitored my communication channels, my finger hovering over the video call accept button. The incoming call notification appeared exactly 12 minutes later. Evelyn. My mother's voice carried artificial panic through my speakers. Something's wrong with our mortgage payment. The system is showing a default notice, but that's impossible. We need your technical expertise right away. Actually, I replied, keeping my video feed professional and steady, Divine Healthcare Investments isn't a standard financial institution. It's an LLC. My LLC, to be specific. The silence that followed felt like a system crash. What? She finally whispered, her video image freezing momentarily. Check your email inbox. You'll find documentation explaining that due to your payment default, Divine Healthcare Investments is exercising its purchase option. The property is now legally under my full ownership. Your status has been automatically updated to month-to-month tenants. This is some kind of technical glitch, she stammered. No glitch. I've been covering the majority of your mortgage for 4 years while you all shared messages mocking me, labeled me a burden, planned to blackmail me, and threatened my career. I have access to all the cloud storage data. Uncle Marcus showed you that video call. He showed you everything. Now, regarding your tenancy status, your first rent payment is due in 30 days. I suggest you start implementing a relocation strategy. My father's voice cut through the call. They'd switched to speaker mode. You ungrateful, careful, I interrupted, my tone matching the coldness of their previous private messages. Is that appropriate communication with your property manager? The eviction notice template is ready. Don't force me to expedite its deployment. I ended the video call and implemented a complete communication blackout, blocking their numbers and email addresses. Within minutes, my inbox began filling with messages from their social network, distant relatives and family friends, all trying to run interference, telling me I was being cruel, that family should forgive family. I moved them all to a filtered folder without reading them. Some system errors couldn't be patched with simple forgiveness protocols. I stood in the empty Phoenix house, my footsteps echoing through the vacant rooms. My family had finally completed their exit strategy last week, downsizing to an apartment across town. They'd attempted every possible exploit: emotional manipulation, legal challenges, reputation attacks. But in the end, the documentation was unassailable. They had no choice but to accept the system reboot. Nathan's attempt to compromise my professional reputation backfired spectacularly. Thanks to my preemptive security measures, documentation sent to HR and evidence provided by Uncle Marcus, his accusations were dismissed immediately. Instead, his actions triggered an ethics investigation by the real estate board, effectively terminating his career access. My mother's final attempt at emotional manipulation came through a voice message: "How could you implement these changes against your own family?" The answer was embedded in their own actions. They demonstrated their definition of family, and I'd finally accepted their parameters. I walked through the kitchen where it had all started, where their video call had exposed their true operating system while I'd been quietly maintaining their financial stability. The irony wasn't lost on me. Uncle Marcus and his wife were coming over later to help prepare the property for market deployment. The proceeds would be allocated to establishing a foundation for supporting victims of financial abuse, transforming a negative input into a positive output. My phone lit up with a message from Sophia: "Just received confirmation from their legal team. They've signed the final documentation. System shutdown complete." I smiled, taking one last look at the empty house. They'd programmed me to believe that family always comes first, but they'd never specified which family. I'd chosen to prioritize my own well-being, and for the first time since the initial system deployment, that choice felt like a successful execution.